Okay, great. Okay, so Maddie, thanks again for joining me and taking some time to talk with me today. I just want to go ahead and start by asking you to tell me a little bit about your role in organizing last night's vigil.
So my sister and I started it. Gabby was a big part of it. I'd say she did more than I did, but it was a team effort. We were sitting together talking about what had been going on with the George Floyd protests and everything, and we realized that a conversation around this had never been started in Lake Forest, and so we wanted to do something. So about 30 seconds later, we started a Facebook group, and it jumped from 30 members to 1,000 within 2 days. And that was pretty crazy.
Yeah. That's really exciting. It must have been really exciting to see that kind of positive response from people. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the importance, especially of holding something like this in Lake Forest and using a place like Market Square as a backdrop.
So I think Lake Forest certainly has a connotation of white privilege, and there is inherent racism. And I think a lot of people are scared to admit it because you don't want to admit that you've been racist. But I can't think of a certain example, but I'm sure I've been racist in my life. So it's just like making people aware. But we thought that having it in Lake Forest and in Market Square, because Market Square is like the symbolic center of our town. And I don't know, when you're in third grade, you do a whole history lesson around Lake Forest and Market Square. A very powerful thing, just shutting down downtown.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of people who are interested in supporting this movement but aren't necessarily comfortable coming out right now because of the coronavirus coming out in person to public. So do you have any advice for people who want to be supportive but aren't comfortable leaving their homes right now?
Yes, so with technology is a great and a bad thing. So I realized that social media can be pretty mean sometimes, but I've also learned that technology has the power to change the world. So if you're at home and scared of coming out or are immunocompromised or whatever the reason may be, there are so many more ways to get involved. You can sign petitions online. It's very easy to find links. You could donate to organizations that are funding Black Lives Matter. One of the organizations that we talked about last night was Project Hood in the south side of Chicago. That one really received a lot of attention. Donating to organizations, reading books, donating money, like I said, discussions with people around you who disagree with you. Just like make yourself uncomfortable, make yourself vulnerable to learn, because you'll never stop learning.
Very true. What were some of the challenges that you and your fellow organizers encountered leading up to last night's event?
When Gabby and I started it, we kind of figured it would be like 50 kids on Deer Path. Our original plan was to do it on Deer Path on the sidewalks, but we couldn't fit that many people there. So, and we didn't have permission from DPM to use their grass, which was a bit surprising, but unfortunate. But I think the hardest things were having to move locations and the confusion of that, and finding speakers was difficult. We were very doubtful the first day that we organized, but the day of the protest, we had about 15 people reach out saying that they wanted to speak. So that stress was alleviated very quickly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and moving the timing, because I know a lot of people were confused about the timing. Because I know Lake Forest asked us to move it earlier in fear of looting happening.
Right, of course. So you mentioned that a lot of people reached out the day of wanting to participate. Did you find that you had support in some unexpected places?
Yes, so I think a lot of people's personal history. I mean, I try to not burn bridges. That's a big part of like who I am. I was chairman of Croya, and part of that is just, you know, being open and being welcoming. And like, I don't know, I just don't feel that there's any need to have personal history in the way of educating your friends, ex-friends, you know, enemies. It doesn't matter who they are or their relationship to you. This isn't about us. This is about people of color and giving them basic human rights that we've had for over 400 years.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of support from unexpected areas, people I haven't talked to in 10 plus years, people I haven't talked to since high school. It was reassuring. Yeah.
That's a great feeling, I'm sure. Um, if you feel comfortable commenting on this, there was, to my knowledge, some contention about how law enforcement was involved in last night's proceedings. Do you know anything about like how communication was between them, or how their presence was sort of,
yeah. I can't speak to the other organizers. There were 4 others who weren't my sister and I, but I can't speak for them. But my sister and I, we never had contact with the police. That was intentional. However, like, they are members of this. I know it was a hard balance because when it comes to looting, the police are going to step in regardless of the situation, because that's just destruction of property. But I know a lot of the protests are about like police reform and fixing systems within law enforcement. So I know there was a lot of people who thought we had worked with them were coming at us for saying like, why would you do this? You know, it goes against the entire point of this protest. But something that was pointed out to me by someone close to me was, regardless of those things, they are members of this community, and we can't stop them from showing up and showing support if they do or not.
Thank you. Last night, there were several community members who spoke about their personal experiences being people of color and feeling marginalized in this community, of having incidents of prejudice directed at them, whether intentionally or not. Have you ever witnessed that yourself, or been in a place where that's been something that you've encountered firsthand?
I mean, I'm a white girl from an affluent town. I've never experienced anything that these people have described, and I can't even begin to imagine what that would feel like, with a target on your back every day of your life.
Right.
So yeah, I've never experienced it, and I hope to God I never have to, and I hope that people that I love never have to, or anyone for that matter. Yeah, it hurts me to think that has happened, but no, I have not.
Yeah, absolutely. There was, as you said, technology can be a blessing and a curse, and I know that there was a lot of social media opinions voiced in the days leading up to this, some of which were very strong in their sort of backlash towards this gathering. Did that affect the way any of this was organized, or what are some of your thoughts about that?
So when people started first coming at us in protest of our protest, we were definitely taken back and humbled, because we quickly realized that a huge mistake on our part was not involving any people of color in the organization of this protest. It was 5 white kids. So I think that was one of the big problems that we had. But sorry, can you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. Just in lieu of the community backlash, some of which was emerging on social media, just if that affected your organization of anything, or just what thoughts you had about that, if you were reading it beforehand and
yeah,
I was circulating in your mind.
Yeah, I was reading it beforehand, and I was commenting back to most people, but I realized that just stepping away and not engaging was what I needed to do to push forward with this protest. I couldn't focus on the negative energy, because there were people of color in the group who were correcting me and educating me, and I'm very grateful for that. I just couldn't do it in that format at the time. So I needed to just push it away for a day. I intend to go back on today to see what people have to say, but I needed to give myself a little break. Yeah, we were going to have it on Deer Path, and then we were kind of being pushed to not have it at Deer Path instead of the train parking lots, and then it was moved for the train parking lots to Market Square. A lot of the issues that arose were like having power in the square. We kept, with the city, we kept going back and forth between, are we going to have power? Are we not going to have power? So we had a megaphone as backup, but we ended up getting power. It's just like a bunch of little things that kind of you would expect in a town that doesn't necessarily want to change.
So now that the event is done, or at least this one gathering is done, I'm sure there's going to be more. Is there a moment from last night that really stands out for you, just in terms of your personal experience, that really sort of just solidified everything and you think will really stick with you?
Yeah, I think the coolest part was Gabby and I expected it to be 50 kids holding signs, and it was, I've heard the number was somewhere around 700. I'm not entirely sure, but it's very different than 50. And one of the coolest parts for me was just looking around and seeing all these faces that I either haven't seen or haven't seen in the 3 years since high school, or people I've looked up to my whole life who are patting me on the back and saying, like, great job. It just felt, it was really cool to have that experience. Roy Brooks, he said, if you're one of the organizers, please raise your hand. And I really didn't want to, but my friends put my hand in the air, and it really did feel very good to have an entire community look to me and say, like, thank you for doing and starting a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. A conversation that a lot of people really clearly, so 700 people were wanting to come and participate in. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
All right, so lastly, next steps. Where do you see this going? Are you involved in taking this further for more gatherings? What do you think is important for people who participated, and perhaps even more importantly for people who didn't, for them to go do going forward?
I think it's important to just keep educating yourself. I think that's the most important thing we can do and ask other people to do, is to just read and learn about people of color and their struggles and the systematic racism in this country. Because if you don't want to believe it's there, I'm sorry, but it is. So we have to do something about it, otherwise nothing will change. I know Gabby and I are interested in handing off the group to a group of people of color to be the admins in the group, because this is, like I said earlier, this is their fight, and we're standing behind them, not in front or with them, or we are standing with them. You know what I mean?
Metaphorically, yes.
Yeah. But other than that, Gabby is planning to work closely with the city of Waukegan to work on a Waukegan relief fund. And then I will be more focusing on Father Cory Brooks. He discussed his organization called Project Hood, which I found to have similar values and characteristics to Koroya. And that was such a big part of my life that I think I am looking to collaborate with Cory Brooks in resources from Lake Forest, South Side, and vice versa.
Wonderful. Is there anything else, Maddie, that you'd like to share about the experience, or anything else you want to add or tell people about this?
Yeah, I'd say if you're trying to make a change, a positive social change, that you know in your heart is right, regardless of the backlash, you must follow through. Because I don't know if people heard about Hinsdale, but there was a protest that was scheduled to happen, and the organizers got in contact with the police, and the police asked them to indefinitely postpone it. And those organizers have gotten a serious amount of backlash because of just the story, like the narrative that went on there. And so I realized that if you have a plan to make a difference, you can't stop halfway through. You got to follow through regardless of the turmoil or consequences.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important. Well, Maddy Moore, thank you again so much for chatting with me. This is really, really enjoyable, really interesting. And again, just you guys are doing really important work. I was really excited to be there last night. So thank you again.
I'm glad you could be there.
Thank you. All right, take care.
Thanks, you too. Bye.